Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. We have a really interesting company we're going to look at today, Azitra. They are a biotech company that is making waves in the skincare world with a really innovative approach. They are using, get this, engineered bacteria.
Yeah, it's certainly unique, and they're going after some pretty challenging skin conditions with their therapies.
You know me, I'm always drawn to companies that are really pushing the boundaries, and Azitra, ticker symbol AZTR, has definitely caught my eye. They've been generating some buzz, especially with a recent stock offering, which has some investors wondering if now is the time to buy in,
Yeah.
or if it's a red flag. But before we get into that, I think it's worth taking a look back at Azitra's journey so far. It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride for the stock, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. As of February 4th, 2025, the stock price sits at
Because wait,
like 0.2785 balls, which is significantly lower than it's been in previous periods.
right, and looking at the 50-day simple moving average,
Mm.
which, as you know, helps visualize the stock's overall trend. Azitra is currently trading below this key indicator, so that often suggests that there's a potential downtrend, right?
It's definitely one piece of the puzzle,
Yeah.
but you're right. We need to look beyond just the technical charts to get the full picture here.
Exactly. And speaking of the full picture, their Q3 2024 financials reported a net loss of over $1 million. Now, I know for some listeners hearing net loss might set off some alarm bells, but for those of us who are seasoned biotech investors, it's not always a cause for panic.
Right. You're right. Biotech companies, especially those who are heavily invested in research and development like Azitra, they often operate at a loss, especially in the early stages. It's all about investing in the future, not necessarily turning a profit right this second.
Okay, so if it's not all about the bottom line right now, what should we be paying attention to with Azitra?
What's really interesting to me is the progress that they're making in their clinical trials. That's where the real potential is.
Right. We're talking about successful dosing of a patient with Netherton syndrome using their ATR12 treatment, which is huge. Plus, they received FDA clearance for ATR04, which is another potential game changer in their pipeline.
And they also got FDA Fast Track designation for ATR04, which
Okay.
that's not just a rubber stamp, that's a big deal.
Yeah, for those of us who aren't regulatory experts, can you break that down for us?
Mm.
Why is that Fast Track designation such a big deal for Azitra?
So essentially, Fast Track designation means that the FDA recognizes the drug's potential to address a serious unmet medical need. And this can translate into a much faster review process, potentially getting that treatment to market faster and giving Azitra a competitive edge. It's a really strong vote of confidence from the FDA.
Okay, so we have positive clinical developments and a regulatory win. Sounds pretty promising, right? But then we have this recent development, a registered direct offering on February 4th, 2025. Azitra offered over 3 million shares at that PAN 27855 price, aiming to raise around $930,000. Now, I guess before we get into this, maybe just for our listeners who may not be familiar with this term, can you just explain what is a stock offering?
In the simplest terms, a stock offering is when a company issues new shares of its stock to the public. And this is how they raise capital for different things, like funding operations, research, or expansion.
Got it. So this direct offering, what are the implications for a company like Azitra? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing?
Well, direct offerings let companies raise capital quickly by selling shares directly to investors, often at a discount. So for a company like Azitra that needs to fuel its research and development, this can be a lifeline. However,
There's always a however, isn't there?
it can also dilute the value of existing shares, which might not be welcome news for current investors. And this particular offering, given its relatively small size and the price point, might signal that Azitra is facing continuing financial hurdles, even with these positive developments.
So it's like a double-edged sword. You know, it provides much-needed capital. But it also potentially raises concerns about their long-term financial stability. And when we look at the stock's performance, that high volatility, over 22% in the last 30 days, really paints a picture of a market that's still trying to decide what to make of Azitra. And with green days, meaning days when the stock price goes up, only happening 33% of the time last month. This isn't exactly screen buy now.
Right. The market is definitely still on the fence about Azitra, the uncertainty surrounding its financial future, even with the promising therapies in development, makes it a risky, albeit potentially rewarding.
Low risk, high reward.
High risk, high reward. That seems to be the theme with Azitra. And we've got analysts offering both short-term and long-term price predictions. One prediction for the short term, by the end of February, has Azitra at C.198132, which is slightly lower than its current price.
Okay. And for those with a longer investment horizon, what's the outlook?
The average prediction for 2025 is $1.72, but that's just an average. The high-end prediction goes as high as 3.4096 cents, while the low end sits at a meager 0.0305.
Wow. Talk about a wide range of possibilities. It really highlights the uncertainty surrounding Azitra's future. So with all this in mind, what's the overall recommendation for Azitra right now?
The general consensus seems to be a hold, which makes sense given the mixed signals that we're seeing. More information is needed, more data from their clinical trials, more clarity on their financial situation, and more time to see how things play out.
It's a classic waiting game in the biotech world. But before we dive deeper into those nuances, let's take a quick break. We'll be back in a moment to continue our discussion about Azitra and what the future might hold.
You know, it really is interesting how Azitra is really harnessing the power of bacteria, something we usually associate with negativity, and using it to potentially change skincare.
I know, it's wild, isn't it? It really is a testament to how science is constantly uncovering new possibilities.
Yeah.
But, we have to be realistic here. Even with this innovative approach and these promising clinical results, there are inherent risks associated with investing in a company like Azitra, especially one that's still in its early stages.
Absolutely. Biotech is inherently a high-risk, high-reward sector. Clinical trials can fail, regulatory hurdles pop up, and the competition is fierce. There's no guarantee that Azitra's therapies will make it to market or achieve commercial success.
And that brings us back to due diligence, something we talk about on this show all the time.
Right. Doing your research. It's essential for making informed investment decisions.
It's more than just a catchy phrase. It really is about going beyond the headlines and digging deeper. For Azitra, this means understanding their technology, their pipeline, their management team, and really getting a clear picture of their overall strategy.
Yeah.
And of course, talking to a financial advisor is always a good idea before making any investment decisions.
Exactly. Informed decisions are the best decisions.
That's a good way to put it. Speaking of informed decisions, that direct offering we discussed earlier does raise some questions about Azitra's financial stability. Even with their innovative therapies and positive clinical results, they're clearly burning through cash. So could this offering just be a temporary fix?
Yeah, that's a valid concern. It really does highlight the fact that even with promising therapies, the path to profitability for biotech companies can be long and unpredictable. Investors need to be prepared for that.
Absolutely. Another thing to think about is competition. The skincare market is really crowded, with big players and startups all vying for market share. So how does Azitra plan to stand out from the crowd?
Right. That is the million-dollar question. While their approach is unique, demonstrating the safety and efficacy of their treatments in such a competitive landscape is going to be critical. They need to convince not just regulators, but also consumers and healthcare providers that their bacterial-based therapies are a better option.
So where does all of this leave us after weighing the potential and the risks? Is Azitra a stock that's worth considering for the average investor?
That's a tough one. It really comes down to individual risk tolerance and investment goals. For some investors, those who are more comfortable with a little bit higher risk and have a longer investment horizon. The potential for Azitra to disrupt the skincare market might be really appealing.
Right. But for others,
Yeah.
the uncertainty surrounding their finances and the competitive landscape might just be too much. It's a gamble.
Exactly. And that's why it all comes back to doing your homework, understanding the company, understanding the market, and most importantly, understanding your own investment philosophy. Only then can you really make an informed decision about whether or not Azitra is right for you.
We've laid out the facts, the potential, and the risks. But ultimately, the choice is yours. What do you think about Azitra and their approach to skincare? Do you see it as a potential game changer or a risky bet?
We want to hear from you. Leave us a comment on our website. Share this episode with your fellow investors. And be sure to subscribe to Investing Talk Podcast for more discussions on biotech and beyond.
Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. We're wrapping up our look at Azitra, and it's a company that's certainly given us a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider here. Promising therapies, regulatory achievements, financial questions, volatile stock. I mean, Azitra is really a biotech company on the move.
And that's what makes this sector so interesting, right? It's this constant mix of groundbreaking science with the challenges of bringing those innovations to market.
Yeah, no doubt. It takes a certain kind of investor to
Yeah.
be in this space, someone who understands the potential, but also the risks that come with it.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up today, let's just recap some of the key takeaways for our listeners, especially those who are thinking about adding Azitra to their portfolio.
Okay, so first and foremost, Azitra is working on some therapies that could really change the game for people with serious skin conditions like Netherton syndrome. And their approach using engineered bacteria is really unique. Definitely something to keep an eye on.
And they've also made some real progress with regulators. They've got FDA clearance for one treatment and a Fast Track designation for another. So that really says a lot about the potential of their pipeline.
Yeah, for sure. But we also have to acknowledge their financial situation. It's still a concern. That recent direct offering, it gave them some cash in the short term, but it also highlights the challenges they face in funding this kind of ambitious research and development.
And of course, the market is still trying to figure out what Azitra is really worth. That's why we're seeing so much volatility in their stock price. It's a potentially high reward investment, but it also comes with high risk.
Right, exactly. Like with any investment, the decision really comes down to you, your risk tolerance, your investment goals, and how much you believe in Azitra's ability to overcome these challenges.
We always tell our listeners to do their own research, talk to a financial advisor, and make informed decisions that fit their own investment strategy.
And remember, investing in biotech, it takes patience. It's a long game. You have to understand that success doesn't happen overnight, and there are going to be bumps in the road.
But if you approach it the right way, with a well-diversified portfolio, the biotech sector can offer some incredible opportunities for growth.
Absolutely.
Well, we spent some time today exploring the world of Azitra and their unique approach to skincare. We hope this has given you some valuable insights to consider as you navigate the world of biotech investing.
And as always, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to Investing Talk Podcast. That way you won't miss our latest analysis and discussions on some of the most interesting companies out there.
And don't forget to share this episode with your fellow investors and leave a comment. We always love to hear from you.
Thanks for joining us today.
And until next time, happy investing.